The governments is the way of thinking of the upper middle class, trying to help the people. But usually it doesn't reach the people in many, many countries. Suppose put the case of India, that or even the subsidies in South Africa. They want to put things in the service of the people, but the bureaucracy, the system, just going, for instance, through contractors, or for instance, in India, is going to local authorities. It doesn't reach. And I think the big element of these groups which have done, they're looking first, going directly, they cannot get directly. And then is trying to be a kind of a negotiate with the government, to try to find ways in which these resources could reach to the people. In the very beginning, already in the 70s, 77, 78, some of the groups were trying to take this project of the government which doesn't reach, and try to make a kind of effort to bring them to the people, try to organize, try to be a bridge of that. And I think that is one of the roles which has been growing continuously. Groups which is an intermediary with the people. For instance, what even the federations in today. One of the very important things is just to get relation, to negotiate with the government. Try to show what sometimes with the government fears is if they go directly without bureaucracy to the people, they will lose the money. But then is try to find out something responsible, just kind of a receptacle of this support. When you just create responsible communities which are able to receive this support. And I think that this is, in these 30 years, has been changing very much. In some governments, not all of the governments. But, sometimes it's the changing of the law. For instance, in the laws in most of the countries, even in Africa, are very high standard, Western standards, that you need to have a plot of 400 square meters or 200 square meters, which the people cannot, and very expensive places. But then sometimes when a government becomes a little more social-minded, they change the law, for instance, for local housing or social housing, and then allows the people to have not so much, which will not have a car, to have kind of a small lanes, which the people will be 100% much better than before. But they will not be like the high-class condominiums.
What is your view on anti-eviction marching and slightly more hot advocacy?
Yeah. Well, that is, in the beginning of the organizations in the 70s, that was really, there was the system, trying to have marches, trying to stop evictions, especially, when there was in Asia or was in Latin America. That means try to get these organizations. And that was, in many respects, was effective, and still is effective, because there was in Thailand it was a big march, peaceful march of the poor of all Thailand, and there were about 30,000 people came with different problems. Were rural people who has problem damage of life for dams, people who were sick in the factories and they didn't have compensation, people who were evicted without reasons, and many people who are living under the bridges. And they march to the capital, Bangkok, and they say, we will stay here till the government solve our problems. And there were about 30,000 people living in front of the Prime Minister for 3 months. And this was the Assembly of the Poor. And what they were saying is, we are poor, we don't have so much knowledge, we don't have weapons, we don't have power. The only thing which we have is our feet. And with the feet, if we are 5 persons, they will never allow us to come to the Prime Minister. If we are 300, perhaps some secretary will come and talk with us. But if we are 10,000 or 30,000, the Prime Minister will come because we are in front of him and will come. And I have a picture of, at the time, the Prime Minister just looking how there were people cooking in front of him. The results was when the people were in front, there were 2 or 3 days of the week. They were talking with the ministers and trying to solve. They have about 128 problems. And they solve about perhaps half of them. And this result was people were about 400 families living under the bridges in Bangkok. And the government, there are problems, dams, which are very difficult to solve because it's built already. But then they say, okay, we will give you some land. But then the people say, well, but some far away from the city. And the people say, no, we cannot do that because we will lose our income, etc. And then finally, they have 4 places in the city in which the government say, okay, we will just leave you this land for 30 years, etc. And you build, and other groups were given just loan for building the houses. That means it was something which I think sometimes is effective. But sometimes many groups, many governments are not doing that. And then what happens, especially this is perhaps is about 20 years ago, they began to do groups which say we cannot wait to the government because or don't have the money or don't have the will or don't have interest, and they began to do things going up towards this goal, whatever they could do. For instance, some people were just, they began the savings just to have something for them. Some people began to make sewer systems in Pakistan, doing by themselves. And it was something which was something new because, the people could just for $30, which would be 300 rands, they will be able to make the sewer in front of their houses for 300 rands per family, household. If the government do, because use contractors, is 1,500 rand. And if international organization, because of very high standards like the World Bank, etc., will be about 9,000 rand per family. That means, something is, people began to do that, look for, don't wait for that, but to negotiate. It's something which is happening in Africa also. Negotiating, for instance, that the federation will get directly, not through a contractor, which is looking for a tremendous profit from this, or bad construction, or very expensive, etc., but try to get directly and do by themselves. This is a very difficult process. Sometimes there are mistakes, etc. But it's the work of the people trying to participate much more in this development. In other countries, for instance, even in Zimbabwe, when was a disaster, was war, was the evictions, destroys, etc. But the government just, in some moment, the people say, well, we want to do, the government is saying that they want to have a better life for us. Could you give us land? Free. And then, I don't know what happens now, but they promised, the minister was 5,000 plots in all the country. Or the same things in Zambia. It's something which the people is trying to get involved, the poor communities, because organizers are a little stronger than individuals. And then they began to have contacts. Sometimes it's council people, or when I go around, sometimes you speak with a minister or secretaries or the small towns, etc. And, these peoples are organizing the place, are organizing the country, and they organize internationally. And then you see, some organizations just begins to be it's kind of a link, given a little power, and this power, a little support of the activities of the people.